You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we show business owners and entrepreneurs how to reclaim, reconnect, and refocus their life by bringing you the top real estate professionals in the industry. We'll help you diversify into real estate by equipping you with the tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Ciminillo. Hey guys, welcome to episode 100 of the Reinvest Podcast.
Insert air horn.
I'm a sucker for the DJ air horn. This has been a long time coming, and it really signifies, a big milestone for us.
That's amazing. It only took us a week to record 100 episodes.
Yeah. So all kidding aside, didn't you calculate how many hours of content? Like if somebody, which this person doesn't exist, and shame on you if you're going to do this, if somebody wanted to listen nonstop, how many hours of content would it be?
No, we're probably at like 7 or 8 days.
Yeah.
You could just watch us.
That sounds disgusting. So anyway, we are episode 100. In order to celebrate this, we decided to go out and find the most obscure person that we could think of to talk about real estate today. So with us is a guy named Brandon, and you're going to have to help me with that. Is it Turner?
Turner.
Brandon Turner. Okay.
It's Norwegian.
You kind of look Norwegian with the beard.
That's what I'm going for, man. Viking style all day.
So let me tell you a funny story. My daughter, Tirza, she's my middle daughter. I shaved my beard, which, to be honest, shaving it's a loose definition compared to what you're talking about. And she was disgusted. She was like, "Don't ever shave your beard again." And then it kind of like prompted, all of these Instagram reels of dads that have done that and freaked their kids out. So I'm probably just gonna grow it out for the long haul here. But all kidding aside, we're excited to have you on the show today, man.
Dude, I'm pumped. I'm honored to be at episode 100. I don't know if I've ever been on, other than Bigger Pockets, obviously. I don't think I've ever done an episode 100 of a show before. So
nice.
I'm honored. Yeah, it's cool.
Well, there's definitely been a lot of inspiration here. But no, it's been a grind in a good way. And, I'm sure if you jump on a podcast, a lot of the time, it's the most natural thing to talk about real estate investing, which I think we're going to get into today. But I wanted to take this opportunity. It's a unique opportunity. Seth and I both, our faith is very important to us, both strong Christians. And I know that that's been something kind of throughout your time and your content and what you've shared. That's a very important part of your life as well. And then you kind of couple that with your journey, and you were kind of like the humble kind of low guy on the totem pole, but just worked the fundamentals. And you're at a different spot in your business now, obviously, and wanted to kind of dive into that, dissect it a little bit for somebody listening, maybe hear something that they don't always get to hear you talk about, if that's okay.
That sounds amazing, man. That's a good topic. Near and dear to my heart, like you said. I had thought about coming on the show and then like live telling you I converted to some obscure religion just to throw it for a loop. But no, I am a good Christian boy.
In the background, you've got like a little Buddha doll or something.
Yeah, like exactly.
That would be the shortest episode ever. I'd be like, I'm going to have to rework the notes here a little bit.
What are we going to talk about? Oh, man.
So, and funny enough, you were a youth pastor back in the day.
Yeah, I was. I mean, I was never ordained. So like it was a volunteer job for the entire time, but I did it fairly full time.
You described probably about 75% of youth pastor work. So
yes, exactly. Yeah. I was volunteer at a small church, had 25, 30 kids that week.
Yeah. Seth and I were both in youth ministry. And I always tell people that youth ministry is the only job where the more immature you are as an individual, the better you are at your position. So for a good 8 years, that was a good fit for me from a professional standpoint.
So true, man.
We can relate to that.
It's great now that I have a little boy. I got a 4-year-old, so I get to bring back all the fart jokes and the pranks and all that.
It's all too accessible, right? You think you grew out of it, but you're like, oh no, this is feeding me inside. You guys
can't leave it. You can't leave it. I'm always gonna be immature, and that's okay. That's fun.
My wife knew what she was getting into. So.
Yeah.
So give us kind of the high level view, man. Just from a faith perspective, what I love is you are honest about it. You are upfront, but it's not pushy. And I think you've been very intentional to display that in a way that seems authentic, not in your face, not Bible thumping. Give us like, how does God change your life? Speed us up from like kind of when that happened, and then what does that look like over the last 15 years?
Yeah, I mean, so the short story. I mean, I was born and raised in a Christian home, Midwest Minnesota family. And so what's that phrase? It's like I was baptized in the amniotic fluid. So like I was like Christian from birth. But I made it my own in college for sure. I went to a little Bible college. 45 kids at the school. It's a 1-year school discipleship out in Colorado. And I met my wife there. I mean, like, girlfriend, then wife. But that was a year really like I just started seeing God's hand on a number of situations, everything from connecting to with my wife and bringing me there. And just a lot of little things that year. I'm like, oh, wow, that was a random occurrence. Like, oh, that was blessing. Holy cow. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I started attributing that to like God. So I kind of made my faith my own. You took it from my parents, made it my own,
Sure.
which a good chunk of people never do. And maybe that there's people listening right now who maybe are in that boat. Like, oh yeah, I still have my parents' faith. Like, I don't know if I actually believe or actually take action on this stuff,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it's a good healthy step to say, no, what do I believe, and I'm going to choose this for myself. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that was college, and I got a minor in Bible, which would just mean I took a bunch of Bible classes. And
So
I,
just
I
a quick
yeah,
caveat there.
please.
I did undergraduate in Bible school, and people were like, "So you have a college degree?" And I'm like, "Kind of."
Yeah, you can kind of call it. Like, yeah. Well, what's fun is I then transferred over to a couple of different community colleges, and then the final school I went to was a larger Christian school in Minnesota. So take that, larger in Minnesota, but it was a larger school. But they took every Bible credit as a history credit, and so I ended up getting a history major. That was what I majored in college,
Oh,
was
That's
history major
hilarious.
because they're
so
like, well,
interesting.
Bible's history. So, and so I got the major in that. But I left college and immediately, yeah, started volunteering at a church as a youth leader, um, and got shoved into that pretty quickly. Two different churches, like one church for a couple of years. Then I left to finish college, came back and did more of that. And then I started leading worship as well. I learned guitar in high
Do you
school, and
still
so
sing?
I do, yeah. In fact, in a month from now, I'll be leading worship at Hope Chapel in Maui. So
Oh
come
my
on out.
goodness. Should we do
Yeah.
something right here on the episode? Should you sing
We
for us?
we only if it's rap. I only rap worship now.
There you
So
go.
like Eminem, 8 Mile, I just change the words to a lot of Bible words.
Yeah.
Nice.
Very terrible.
That'd be tough to do.
Be really tough to do. It'd be terrible. But yeah, no, I do it occasionally. I do it like twice a year. Maybe I'll lead worship now, and I really enjoy it a lot. I just don't have the time for it anymore. So
Yeah.
you know, it is what it is. And I'm not,
So
it's
you
like
went
a
to
young man's game. I feel like.
yeah, no, it is. It is. And you have to be willing to wear some skinny jeans or jeans
Exactly. Yeah.
to
The
really
the
fit
rip,
in. So
yeah.
so what
I,
happened after you went to a big college?
yeah.
When did you
Big-ish.
transition out, or what happened after the youth pastor thing?
Yeah, I mean, I did that all the way through, and part of the story is I ended up being the worship leader and the youth leader at this church because, and this is one of those kind of interesting God moments. The youth pastor, who was a woman, and she was also the worship leader, ran off with the pastor, and so we lost our
Oh,
pastor and youth leader and worship leader in one day.
wow.
No,
Yeah, both married, both separate,
dude.
left. That was a good way to destroy a church. Um,
That is
yeah.
unique.
But here's where the story is super interesting, and to see God's hand on it in reverse, uh, is that like about a year earlier, I'm having a conversation with this old couple in that church, and I say to them, "Man, yesterday I read this an amazing real estate investing book called The ABCs of Real Estate Investing." I knew they were kind of in real estate. He had taught me how to paint a house one time. This old guy, he just volunteered his time to come show me how to paint because I had to paint a house I owned. Anyway, so I knew they were like dabbled in real estate at some point in their life. So I was telling them, yeah, I read this book on real estate. Have you guys ever heard of it? It's called The ABCs of Real Estate by Ken McElroy. And they hadn't. But then they looked at me kind of funny because I said, I really want to buy an apartment complex now. Someday I'm going to buy an apartment complex. That's my new goal. And they were like, well, we actually have an apartment complex we want to sell.
No
In that
way.
wild connection there, the fact that I told them this, I ended up buying the deal from them.
Wow.
I don't know, maybe 9 months later, maybe a year later. And then right after that, so I buy this property. I start making a few $1,000s a month in cash flow. I quit my job because now I've got financial, like some level of financial independence, not complete fully, but like
When
I
your
can pay the bills.
expenses are 24,000 a year and you now have
Exactly. If
financial
that,
freedom.
yeah. It's like I could live pretty darn cheap. And all of a sudden I didn't have my job anymore. And then guess what? The pastor runs off with a youth pastor, and now they need a full-time worship leader and youth leader. So guess who
Wow.
steps right into the role? And had I not had that financial freedom to be able to do that, and again, it was light financial freedom, but
Right.
had I not had that, it would have been. So it was kind of interesting to see, like, God was like, "Hey, there's going to be little morons in my family, like that happens, and people are stupid." And he's like, "I'm not going to have a bunch of robots that can't do this, but I'm going to make sure that this church doesn't fall apart anyway." So
Yeah.
he started lining up things ahead of time to make sure that the church didn't go like lacking, and so they didn't.
I think
they
it's
didn't have
interesting too that a lot of time in ministry, and for people who aren't familiar with this, kind of within the church context, there are some interesting perceptions about money when you are in vocational ministry, but to kind of your example, your investment success or that kind of initial project that you tackled gave you the ability to even fulfill those voids.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm a big believer that there are, I would say, I mean, I don't know if I'd say this, but let me I'll say the statement. I don't know if I completely agree with this, but I'll say it. I think the majority of people in the world do not have the gift of making money. And they can get the gift of making money if they choose to. I don't think it's something that that you can't get, but majority of people will never get it because they will never ask for it, and therefore they won't receive it. Therefore, but some people have the gift of making money. That seems weird to say it's a gift, but I do think it's a gift. And that's not to buy a private jet. I mean, maybe I'll buy a private jet someday if I can find a way to make it an asset that makes money. But it's not to benefit our own lives. It's to equip the saints and equip the kingdom and to drive forward God's purpose. And so he's like, all right, you guys will make the money over here, and you're going to give it to all these people who are going out overseas or, working at a church or helping out a soup kitchen. You're going to give the money to those people. And so as long as I remember that.
I did fundraising for a while. And it was interesting because I was still in vocational ministry, but I was having to interact with Christian business owners. And I brought my kind of warped thinking into those contexts, thinking like, oh, this is going to be like, I got to twist their arm or I have to beg and grovel for them to give money. And it blew me away when I figured out that there were people that wanted to give money to fund Christian endeavors or these ministries that were like on the ground, meeting people kind of hands and feet of Jesus type thing. And I realized that I had this stereotype of wealth that whoever was holding that wealth was going to have to be coerced or convinced to be generous. And that totally broke down. Some of the most generous people that I know today are some of the wealthiest people that I know. And some of the greediest people I know don't have any money. Right. And it's a weird paradigm.
I sometimes wonder if a lot of the Bible and a lot of Jesus's time warned against wealth. There's a lot of warnings against wealth in the Bible. And I'm only half saying that, I only half believe this, but I sometimes wonder if the times were different back then. And poor people were a lot more humble and kind, and rich people were just all arrogant jerks. And so therefore in that time, that's just what it was. It does not feel like that in America, except for in the movies. Like in the movies, the rich people are still the bad guy and the arrogant one. But the majority of wealthy people I know are incredibly generous. And there is danger to wealth. We can definitely talk about that for sure. But
I think those things go hand in hand. It's going to be kind of the wealth and the influence. And so get us to that point to, okay, you went from that youth pastor position. You got your first apartment complex.
How many units did you have before you bought that apartment complex?
Yeah, maybe 8. I think probably 8, 9, 10.
Just like singles or duplexes.
Exactly. Like a couple single families, maybe a duplex. I think a triplex was in there. And so I think a good lesson too is this person didn't offer me a 24 unit because I had never done anything. I had to step out first and do the work and do the hard work of smaller deals before they saw, and they watched me. They were watching me for years. I didn't know this, but they were watching me for years thinking, oh, maybe someday Brandon would buy our apartment complex. It was almost like they had already been kind of planning it in their head, maybe loosely. So anyway, the lesson learned is people are watching you, and how you do anything is how you do everything. And start with, he's been given small stuff, he's going to be given more. Yeah. It's that concept, but with people, they're watching you, the mentors and other real estate investors. So
and don't get huffy when somebody is doing that with you, right? Yeah. We all have to kind of strike that entitlement that we have. Yeah, that's good.
I just literally read in the Bible this morning a passage. I think it was in 1 Corinthians 4. Every day, this is a side note, but every day I read one chapter of the Bible. I bought a special Bible just for this. I read one chapter and I underline something that's an interesting point, and then I write a note to my daughter Rosie about that verse. In almost every chapter, I'm struggling a little bit in Leviticus, but I try to find something to pull out in every chapter that is a lesson to Rosie. And if I do that, it'll take me 3.5 years or something like that to get through the whole Bible, doing a chapter a day. But then when she's 18, I'm going to give her that Bible. So we'll have
Wow.
thousands of notes from dad, but about the word of God, which I think is a cool strategy. So
Yeah.
I'm doing that. It also makes my reading time way better because now I'm looking for
Looking.
application, like right
Yeah.
in there.
Are you going to do
Which
that for your son?
yeah, exactly. Once I finish the 3 years, then I go to my son, and then we're pregnant with our third. So once that 3.5 years is done, I'll do another one.
You're
So you
on a
can do that with your
10-year
kids.
journey.
Yeah, I think it's a great way for me to read the Bible
Yeah.
more. It's a great way for them to like, and should I ever pass away or die, it's like they've got thousands of
Legacy. Yeah.
encouraging messages from dad about the Bible. I just think it's so cool. So
That's
anyway,
really cool.
this morning, yeah, in 1 Corinthians 4, there was a thing he said, it's Paul's like, why do you, he basically says like, why do you act like you didn't receive everything you have? He's like,
Oh.
every single thing you have is paraphrasing, but every single thing you have in life, you got as a gift. And I mean, and I translate, I wrote it to Rosie. I'm like, your health, your intelligence, the fact that you're born in America in such a great time, like, don't be arrogant about any of this because it was
Yeah.
all given to you. It is a
Yep.
100% blessing. You did nothing to earn any of that. So stop the arrogance. I didn't say that to her, but I was like, yeah, let's keep arrogance and pride
Yeah.
out of it because we could have been in a much worse position. I mean, like
Yeah.
we won the lottery.
Yeah, we did.
So like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then the responsibility that comes with that. Don't squander it.
yeah,
You know
don't
what I mean?
squander.
There
Yeah,
should be a weight that comes with that.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
So what happened next?
What happened next? So I started the Bigger Pockets podcast right after that, alongside Josh Dorkin. I was volunteering at Bigger Pockets. Like I was just a member.
How
I started
did you? Yeah. How
volunteering.
did you even connect?
Yeah.
You just connected through online of being on the
Yeah.
platform, or
Yeah,
what?
I was literally just a member of the site. I was member like number 8,212 or something like that. And all it was a forum. There was no blog yet.
Yeah.
There was no anything. He had a section called articles, and then the whole site was supported by a donation button. So he made a few $100s a month off donations and
Wow.
then Google Ads. And so I was just a member, and I remember my first post, I asked like, what do you do if tenants? No. The first one I read was what to do if tenants don't pay rent. And I learned all this stuff. I mean, that was property one. Like when I bought my first property, I found Bigger Pockets. So then over the years, I hung around Bigger Pockets. I engaged in the forums. I asked questions. People can go back and look at my old content. It's all there. You can see like when I'm talking about this 24 unit, this couple in my church is thinking about selling me their property. I don't know what I'm doing. What's seller financing? How
That's
do I do
weird that
this?
stuff's still out there.
It's still all out there. Yeah, you can backtrack
Wow.
and go to the early Bigger Pockets days and look at my content there. But anyway, so I ended up starting a blog of my own because I'm like, oh, I really like this writing thing. So I started writing right after I bought that apartment complex. Started writing about real estate. I had a blog called realestateinyour20s.com,
Oh,
and I thought maybe I'll make a few bucks selling like a calculator. In fact, I still have that website. It's still there, and I still sell the calculator like once every couple of months. Somebody will buy it. I don't know how they get there, and I don't know how the technology still works. But yeah, they're buying a $7 calculator, which is funny. It's a good calculator. Anyway, so I made a few bucks that way. But then in that process, I reached out to Josh at Bigger Pockets, and he was like the godfather. I mean, he was such an intimidating guy. I was so scared to talk to him on the phone the first time. But I reached out to him and I asked if I could write for him. And he ignored me, just completely ghosted me
nice.
for like 7 months. And then he actually found my blog because I started getting a little bit of traction with it. And he reached out to me and was like, oh, sorry, I missed this email. Do you want to
Oh,
write?
yeah.
So I started
Honestly, this
writing for
guy's
Josh,
legit.
just volunteer. And then he put on, and because of that, we became Facebook friends. And because of that, he posted one day, hey, I'm looking for some extra help part-time. I think it was even part-time volunteer basis, editing blog posts. And I was like, I got a lot of free time. I'll edit
Did
blog
you
posts.
just forward him your original email?
Yeah, exactly. I think I did. So I just started volunteering editing blog posts for him. And then that turned into getting paid for it. And then that turned into, hey, why don't we start a podcast? And he's like, no, I don't even know what a podcast is. And I'm like, oh, they're the greatest thing because I'd been listening to a couple. And that's how,
That's
we started.
funny.
That's kind of,
Wow.
phase 2 there was.
So one of the
Bigger
things
Pockets.
that I noticed, and that sounds like it's an original observation, but when you for your Better Life podcast, when you kind of
Yeah.
launched that, it seemed like there was a shift in your intentionality to talk about your faith. Why was that?
Yeah.
What precipitated that?
Yeah, there's 2 reasons. One, I don't believe God gave me this position of influence and millions of people knowing who I am for me to buy a jet and a Lamborghini. Again, no downside to buying those, but I don't think that's why God gave me that gift. So when I think about why He gave me that, it's either to earn a lot of money, which is possible, or B, it's to talk. Like I've always had this theory ever since I was a little kid. I said I don't necessarily want my life to be like I'm converting people to Christianity. I said I want my mission to be that people see me and they're like, oh, it's okay to be normal and a Christian. Like, because a lot of people have a really negative view about Christians, and they think Christian and they think like the crazy uncle who, molested them, or went to church every Sunday, or they think of a pastor who ran off with the youth pastor.
Right.
We have all these exceptions, not the rules. And then they see that is what a Christian is. So I always said, I want to be the Christian that people are like, oh, it's okay to have some money and be funny and have a good life and, work out, but also be a Christian like that. That's cool. So anyway, I thought by talking about my faith online, it accomplishes that mission. I'm not converting anybody over to Jesus. But it does let people go, oh, I can be a real person. And there's real people that are real Christians that are actually decent humans.
Yeah.
Maybe I should consider it. And so maybe it moves the ball down the field 1 yard, the field of, getting to know Jesus entirely. That's one reason. I'll tell you a more cynical reason. And this might sound bad, but like when I talk about faith, it is decisive. People and the Christians really, really like it. And so there's also like an algorithm, I don't know the word, algorithm style reason for it. And I actually got this advice from a non-Christian who's a Instagram influencer. And I don't like to go overboard on this, but he basically said, don't hide it. Don't not talk about it because you think it's decisive and you think people will get, ticked at you. He's like, they will get ticked at you. And then more people will see it. And he was saying it from a standpoint of, whatever, just like if you want to grow your
kind of like bad publicity is still publicity kind of thing. Like
exactly. But I looked at him like, okay, well, if my goal is to reach more people, both with the message of real estate investing and wealth and financial freedom, but also the message of Jesus, what's the best way to do that? You got to be more decisive then and be more opinionated and talk about it, because the Christians will rally to you and be like, yeah, that's my guy. And then they'll like and comment and share. And then the non-Christian, like that tells Instagram, oh, this is good content. People like it. And so then the non-Christians see it and then they get a little whiff that, hey, maybe Christianity isn't always weird. So
there's a really cool
strategy there.
Very underlying foundational thing. And then a very practical, pragmatic perspective to that.
The more I talk about God, the more the posts just do better. And I don't think that's God blessing it. I think it's just, people like people who have an opinion and they stand for something. People like people who stand for something.
Yeah.
So let me hit you with this. This is a phrase that's been, it's something that I continually come back to in my prayer life and something I always think about. And it's the idea that I don't want my calling to exceed my character. Okay. So I don't want to get so big that my character can't uphold the load of that responsibility, that position, that influence, right? And so it kind of illustrates the fact that people do struggle with being in those influential positions when maybe they're not ready for it. What's been some of the observation as your career has furthered and your success has become more public, and what have you seen personally within yourself, observationally from other people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I witnessed it a lot in churches. I mean, we all have the stories and personal anecdotes as well about pastors who have moral failings, whether it's a affair or whether it's a addiction or gambling or something. Like Christian leaders seem like, and I don't know percentage wise if it's actually true, but it sure seems like they have a higher rate of moral failing.
Mm-hmm.
And my theory on behind why that is, and because I feel it and I see it, is the number of times in a given day that I get told that I changed someone's life. That, like, what does that do to a human's like psyche? Like, that's not good for you. And pastors get it all the time.
Right.
You change my life, especially celebrity pastors, but any pastor, it's like you get the congregation like, oh my gosh, that was so good. You're so talented. And so you
think
start,
it's you.
Yeah, exactly. You start thinking it's you. And you're like, yeah, I'm pretty good. Which kind of goes back to that passage in 1 Corinthians about like everything I got, I received. So I get told all the time in emails and DMs, everyone's very, very nice. My typical
it's
response,
well-meaning, right? It's well-meaning.
Exactly.
Because,
well-meaning.
Hey, you encourage me. I want to bless you by letting you know that, and they don't know that they're actually creating some kind of a
stumbling block.
Yeah, like something you have to now filter.
Yeah, you do have to. I have to filter. And so my kind of response always is, hey, like 99% of people who listen to me never do anything. So the 1%, like you would have done it with or without me. So it's not me, it's you. It's just you have the character to be able to do it. Now, if I'm a step in that journey, I'm glad to be. Like, I'm honored to have have been there, but you would have figured it out anyway. And just people are very generous, and I think people like to overemphasize, because I've done this. Like example, I met Ken McElroy, the guy who wrote ABC's of Real Estate Investing, the book that really like that moment changed my life.
Yeah.
So when I tell Ken, man, can you change my life? Which I probably said to him. I think I've said it on stage when introducing him. He's going to take that as like, oh yeah, like I just changed. And well, you were one. I hope Ken's not listening to this, but like you were one of 100 steps or 1,000 steps that changed my life. Yeah. It's a continual thing. But I don't tell him that. I'm like, oh Ken, oh my gosh, you were one of 1,000. Like that would be a weird thing.
Thanks, Brandon.
So, by the way, Ken's our number one listener, so he's definitely going to hear that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a pull towards arrogance when you get told that you are amazing all the time, and to fight against that. And I think about it all the time. I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday's book, Ego is the Enemy. And it's a non-Christian book on, stoicism, but the idea is the same, as like our arrogance and our ego it can hurt us really bad if we let it run away with it itself. So yeah, I literally I have a therapist I don't talk to that regularly anymore, but I used to talk to quite regularly. I have a number of friends that have called me out on stuff. In fact, one of my buddies I wrote a post on Instagram maybe a month ago, and I was trying to be a little more opinionated because those tend to do well. And I said something along the lines of, if your only value is flipping burgers, you're never going to exceed the amount of money a burger flipper is going to make. You've got to increase your value and your skill set to higher dollar per hour tasks if you want to make more money. Now, I think we would all agree with the sentiment behind that. It's like, yeah, that's true, right? If you only know how to do $10 an hour tasks, you're only going to make $10 an hour. But he texted me, he's like, hey man, I don't usually say this to you. He's like, I love your content. You're amazing. Or whatever. You're trying to soften the blow, but he's like, this was he's like, this is a really arrogant, post. I think you went too far. I think you should take it down. And I went and looked at it. I'm like, and I tried, like, my ego's like, no, screw you, man. Yeah. It's great. Like, people need to learn this stuff. And then I looked at it for a while and I'm like, no, this is why I have people like him in my life, to tell me when I've gone too far. Yeah. And when I'm being arrogant. He's like, it just screams arrogance. That's not doing anything for the kingdom.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you're right. So I took it down. I apologized, and I wrote a little apology note like on the Instagram. I was like, hey guys, sorry that last post was, I worded that really poorly. All I was trying to say was, whatever. All right, that second post did 10 times better. People love apology posts.
Interesting. I remember seeing both of those posts.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, they populated my feed. Yeah.
So they both did well. Because they were opinionated, but yeah. So having like men of God around me that are not afraid to text me and say, hey man, you're sounding kind of arrogant right now. Like, you're getting a little big for your britches, I think has been really important.
I think that what's interesting about this, we always hear the term blind spot, right? Yeah. And my wife and I, we have a lot of good discussion about that kind of stuff. And she's one of those people that brings me down to size. Like, that's a built-in accountability and humility, right there.
Oh, you made $1 million? Here, do the dishes.
There's a blowout in that kid's diaper that you're going to go change. Yep. And you're like, yeah. But by definition of a blind spot, it's something that you don't see. Yeah. And here's what's tricky about that phrase. You think, oh, it's something that I'm not aware of at all. But usually a blind spot, it's something that you acknowledge. What's blind about it is you don't know the severity of it, right?
Yes.
And so we've kind of come up with this thing of like, hey, if somebody's coming to you with a blind spot and you see that thing, assume that it's 10 times worse than what you acknowledge it is.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
And then you're able to kind of frame that and be able to do something with it. But you kind of disarm and justify, like, oh, I already know that's an issue in my life, therefore it's not a blind spot. And you're like, you need to pursue that a little further. So first of all, kudos to you for, kind of adhering to that. What do you do with criticism?
Yeah. I'm sure you've never had it.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, if you were to receive it.
There was this Christian businessman in our area who was an incredible guy that he quite literally legally gave away his business 100% owner, like, to the Lord legally. And so he was millions and millions of dollars gave away. And so just really cool testimony. I remember I was sitting down with him and he was speaking to us because we were in this youth ministry program and we could ask him questions. I was like, hey, Stanley, what do you do with discouragement? And he's at this point like 96 or 7. He was really old. He just looked at me. He's like, I don't get discouraged. I was like, I don't even know what to do with that in my 19-year-old brain. I was like, my whole life is a ball of a mess, you know? And so I just, that it reminded me of that, but.
That's good. Yeah, I get, it affects me for sure. I mean, I want to be liked. I like to be liked. I'm a people pleaser at my core. And so when I get the YouTube comment from, you know, whatever, Starfield 752, who's like, look at this gay boy. I'm like, oh man, I suck. You know, like I still get that. So a couple things. One, I'm getting better at it. The more I get called whatever, gay boy, like I'm like, okay, well, thanks. You know,
I think you look good.
Yeah.
That probably didn't help your case.
Yeah, no. Okay, so one, I actually generally actively try to avoid it. And I don't know if this is the right answer or not, but I just typically try to avoid. I don't read a lot of comments. I try not to read them because they do bring me down, whether or not they're stupid or not. And they're just some young kid who's just a troll. It still makes me feel kind of bad. I generally don't read comments. I let my team read the comments and
Filter
maybe
that,
I'll read.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's number one. I try to avoid it. Number two, I try to remember that like my value is not what somebody on the internet says about me, or even what somebody I know says about me.
Right.
Like my value is what people who love me most say about me. And that is God, my wife, and my kids, right? What they say about me is who I am. So it's like, it like doesn't really matter what other people say. So I try to always remember that, and that works okay. Yeah, and then I always remember, and I heard actually I had a friend over last night chatting about this, about like when people criticize you, it's not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them, right? So when somebody says, for example, I have a post that went viral on TikTok a few weeks or I don't know, a month ago, and it was just me telling the story of how I bought my daughter a fourplex the week she was born. And now I use the burr strategy on it. I didn't use a whole lot of money out of pocket. I've been in this game for a long time before I did that. There's a lot of reasons, like it wasn't a big deal for me to buy a fourplex for my daughter Rosie, but there's probably 10,000 comments on that just ridiculing me about how stupid I am, how this is not possible, how I'm a scammer, how I must be, you know, been born rich. All these stuff, people very, very angry. And when it comes down to it, they're not angry at me. They're simply reflecting on their own lack of ability to be able to buy a fourplex. And therefore they're like, well, that makes me feel bad inside that I couldn't buy a fourplex right now because I'm too poor or broke or dumb or whatever. Yeah. But I don't want to feel bad about myself. So I'm going to then attack that person and say that they're the bad ones. And people listening to this might be like, oh yeah, that I've seen people do that, but I would never do that. No, we all do that. Right. Like you see the person who's got the nice, like the really, really nice car, and you're like, I bet they're just a jerk to their wife. You know, like we just say these little things all the time to bring other people down in our heads because we don't want it to reflect badly. We don't want to admit that maybe we're the ones at fault, and that our ego might get a little bruised if we admit that like we could have something better or more.
Man, and that's truth right there. Yeah.
Anybody with a six pack, I hate them. They're terrible people, and they have horrible personalities, and they're awful to their kids. If you have a six pack, clearly you can't be a good human. That makes me feel better about not having a six pack.
You know, it is humbling though to watch people, and I think it is one of the reasons it's important to have people in your life that'll tell you the truth. Is it's that constant reminder that you are really not as so much different than the other guy.
Yeah, you're not
proverbial
above
them.
Yeah, you're not above anything, not above them. Yeah.
So, okay, we live in a digital age, and what's interesting about the global economy, the internet, is it's opened up a new way to do business, and what's incentivized, per what you've been talking about earlier, is social media, being public, right? Having a brand. And so you're incentivized to put yourself out there, to create content, to have your opinions broadcasted, blasted, engaged with. What advice would you give someone who's trying to build a business that way, just from knowing what you know?
Great question. So yeah, having an online brand is like a superpower. It's like, you know, on Super Mario Brothers when he gets the mushroom and he gets bigger, and now then later he can like shoot fireballs if he gets the flower. It's like that. It's like it just makes you makes everything easier. Or maybe a better metaphor. Here we go. It's like being absurdly hot, an absurdly hot woman. Everything in life is easier when you're an absurdly hot woman.
That's true.
Right?
That's what we say.
If you're one of those ladies out there, it's true.
Yes. It's just life. And the funny thing is they don't realize it, right? Like absurdly hot women are like, everybody in the world is so nice to me. Like people buy me food and gifts all the time. Like they just assume that's how the world is. No, it's because you're absurdly hot. And so having for a woman, it's being absurdly hot. for me, it's having a big audience makes everything easier. Now there are hard parts, and just like I'm sure there's hard parts of being hot. I wouldn't know, but I'm sure there are. There are hard parts in the arrogance that comes with it, and the having to maintain it and hire employees and the cost and all that. But man, if you have people who know, like, and trust you, and you like, there's so much opportunity. In fact, Josh Dorkin taught me this. The very first phone call conversation I ever had with him. I was telling you, I was a little scared. We're going full circle here. I was scared to talk to Josh. But he emails me after that whole, like, our email exchange. He's like, hey, let's hop on a call and talk about you helping me out. So I remember I was actually in my apartment complex. We were over there fixing something, my wife and I. We drove into the apartment complex, and this is it's a rough area. So I'm like parked in the back by the dumpster, and I'm like waiting for this call. I'm gonna do it in the car because it's quiet in the car, and my wife's sitting next to me. And we're like, oh my gosh! And then the phone rings, and it's a number from Denver, and he lives in Denver. I'm like, oh, it's Josh, and I'm so freaked out. And I'm like shaking. I'm like, I can't believe I'm gonna talk to this celebrity. And this is before the podcast. Like, I only knew him just because of he was the founder of Bigger Pockets. But anyway, so I get on the phone. I'm talking to him.
Which funny,
like,
real quick, celebrity to you is like you would only know him if you were on Bigger Pockets, probably.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like anybody else, like Josh, who? That's a weird name.
Yeah, exactly. He was a business owner of a small business that had made no money. Cool. But he was such a big deal because he founded this website that helped me build get financial freedom. Right. And so anyway, we're chatting on the phone, and he's like, so what do you plan to do with this whole real estate in your 20s website? And I was like, I don't know. I'm selling this calculator now for $7, and maybe I'll sell like a course or something like that. And he goes, yeah, you could do that. Or you could get millions of people to know you, to like you, and to trust you, and you could do whatever you want for the rest of your life with that.
Did he really phrase it that way?
Not that eloquently. I'm probably paraphrasing, but that was the gist of what he said.
He saw that's where it was going to head.
He saw that where it was going.
Wow.
He saw that before almost anybody else did. And this is before, like, now that's a fairly common thought. You see the Kardashians, Kylie, whatever, becoming a billionaire because a lot of people know, like, and trust her. And she took her makeup brand and just blew it up because of that. But that was an obscure thought back then. But Josh saw that. He's like, if you can get millions of people to know, like, and trust you, you can do anything you want. And that made a big impact. That's why Bigger Pockets has never really sold courses or anything like that, because they're like, they don't want that. They want the audience. They want millions of people to know them. They can do whatever they want. Now, whether they've capitalized on that well, I don't think I think they could do a lot more. I think they could buy companies and all that. There's not. That's fine. They got their own plan, their own mission. But now that I have an audience, like, if I wanted to go raise some money, right? I did actually. We raised like $500,000 for the Mackay Foundation. And I didn't do all of that. It was me and my partners, but it's a nonprofit we started after the fires in Maui. So we raised like $500,000 and we've raised another now, I think $500,000. And a lot of that is because of my brand and a couple of other guys that are in the group, their brand. So if you want to raise money, having a brand makes it way easier. If you want to raise money for real estate, I've raised $430 million for real estate deals.
That's a lot of money.
Right? It's a ridiculous amount of money. Yeah. Wow. I have a coffee company. I have a mortgage company. All those things are easier because I have an audience. So yeah. Wow. That's why to build a brand. Now, how to build a brand is a whole different conversation. But if I give you like 3 quick tips on that, number 1 is like, just, tell the truth. Like, and what I mean by that is like, just be open and honest. Don't hide things. Like, talk about your family, talk about your faith, talk about your kids. You don't have to show pictures of them if you don't want to, but just be a person. People don't want to follow a company. They want to follow a person. Mm-hmm. And then be opinionated, like have an opinion on stuff. It's really hard because in real estate, everything's nuanced. And I hate the gurus out there are like, this is why the BRRRR strategy sucks. You shouldn't do the BRRRR strategy. And I'm like, well, I mean, some people shouldn't do the BRRRR strategy, but we really could do the BRRRR strategy. If you do this right, if you get this mortgage, and as long as you have this backup plan, you got the cat. They don't want to hear that. Doesn't do well. So anyway, have an opinion of some kind will help you do really well. And then just continually improve. Like, you're going to suck the first couple of years. I don't know. My first podcast, please don't go listen to it. Anybody ever, because it was terrible. My first 100 podcasts were probably pretty terrible. You guys figured it out on episode 1, but most of us don't. And so
you obviously have not listened to episode 1.
Yeah, you get better over time. So just like stick with something, have a thing. And the last point is like, the more specific you are, the more people want to follow you. If you're like, I teach business, everyone's like, okay, well, great, good for you. But if you're like, I teach real estate, now people are more interested. I teach the BRRRR strategy. Oh, now people really want to follow you. I teach people with no money how to do the BRRRR strategy to get financial freedom in 5 years. Now everyone's like, that's my guy. I'm going to follow him.
Yeah.
So the riches are in the niches. The more you can niche down, and then you can expand later. I was real estate in your 20s. It was how to buy rental properties in your 20s. That was all I talked about. And then
Are you
I
real estate
expanded.
in your 30s now? 40s?
I'm sadly not, and by next year and next July, I'm going to be real estate in your 40s. Maybe I probably should have bought the domain name. I never did. Maybe I'll buy real estate in your 40s.
You're gonna realize that it was bought like a few minutes like after this episode. But I'll be fair with you. I'll sell to you.
All right, we're gonna move on here. So we're gonna jump into our smaller pockets segment.
Please.
So Brandon, this is the part of the show where you tell us about one of your worst real estate deals. What happened? What went wrong? And then most importantly, what did you learn from it?
Yeah. All right. So I love this story. This is probably, I don't know, over 10 years ago now. Maybe 2000. Yeah, it's probably 15 years ago. It's probably 2014. I was in real estate. I was doing some stuff. I wanted to flip some houses. So I was doing a few flipping houses here and there. And I find this duplex that's coming. I didn't go on the market. It was an off market thing first, and then it came on the market. Anyway, get this duplex. Originally, I wanted 80 grand for it. Ended up getting it for $40,000 for a duplex, up and down, like top bottom duplex. Could be a triplex actually, very easily. But I'm like, I'm gonna flip that house. I'm gonna flip it, and it's gonna be a beautiful house. So I spent a year of my life working on it. Like every day I was there. I hired an employee to work on it with me. It was 4,000 square feet.
Of your own time.
Yeah, my own time. Yeah, I was over there almost every day working on it. I listened to so much punk rock that year on Pandora radio. It was great. Just put in headphones and work on the house. I built a staircase right up the middle of the house, so I joined the top and bottom, so it became a house, not a duplex. I put in like these cherry hardwood floors and this travertine tile in the bathrooms, and it was beautiful. The house was amazing. We tried to list it at 180,000, didn't sell. 170 didn't sell. 160, 50, 40, 30, 120 finally sold. Which ended up I ended up losing like, I don't know, it was 15 grand maybe on the deal. Well, at a time of my life where 15 grand was a ridiculous amount of money.
And a year of your life.
And a year of my life. But here's what I learned from this lesson. A couple of things. Number one, had I just refinanced that property and kept it, today it would be worth $600,000 in this market.
Oh, wow.
So time heals all wounds with real estate. Had I kept it, had I instead not flipped it, had I just kept it as a duplex, and even I could have turned it into a triplex really easily. I had like another level that was like a basement that was full height, that was easy to turn in, and had a bathroom down there. I mean, everything should have been a triplex. I would have cash flowed over $1,000 a month from day one. Like right after the rehab, I would have made $1,000 a month in cash flow. Today, I'd be sitting at probably $3,000 a month in cash flow on that property.
Wow.
Time heals everything, and so does rental properties. So I guess I got fixated on flipping. And so I said, I'm going to flip a house versus saying, what is the highest and best use for this property?
Right.
I shouldn't have done it. Anyway, I mean, I was broke and I was young and I didn't have a lot of cash. And so there were a lot of reasons why I flipped it and didn't buy as rental. And I don't know if I could have I could have gotten the loan. I could have found a partner. We could have split the $1,000 a month and made $500 a month. That would have been fine. It would have been a 30-day rehab, not a 9-month, 10-month rehab. So yeah, I learned a lot of lessons in that about, if you can hold real estate, you almost will never lose as long as you can hold it.
And we have a lot of clients that get kind of caught in that trap of flipping because it's cash today. It's easy in, easy out, you know? But life is this way. If you can play for the long game in your relationships and your business, I mean, that's how it compounds. So, all right, we're going to go into what we call our little nugget. All right, Brandon, this is a part of our show where you give us one practical takeaway or piece of advice for our listeners to implement into their investing businesses. Could be very fundamental. It could be more like a hack, something very practical. Yeah.
The phrase I use all the time, I always say you get the results of what you repeatedly do, right? If you want a good marriage, what do you got to repeatedly do to get that good marriage? Have good conversations with your spouse. You go on date nights, stuff like that. There's things you do. If you want to be a good parent, there's things you do. If you want to be a real estate investor, there are things you do. And so you get the results of what you repeatedly do. And so what I recommend is habit tracking. And you probably heard this before, but if not, if somebody's never heard this before, this would be the one tip I could give you to change your life. Is one, define like what you're going after. Like what goals are you trying to go after, and reverse engineer them from a 5-year down to a 1-year, down to a quarterly, down to even a weekly goal I have. And then what are the actions you got to do to be able to get those? Mm-hmm. So again, if your goal is to lose 20 pounds, what are the actions? I got to go to the gym 3 times a week. I'm going to eat healthy 6 days a week. and have a perfect eating day. Okay, write that down, track that habit. And then every day, just on this little tracker, did you do it or did you not do it? At the end of the week, add it all up. Did you what was your score?
Yeah.
So like if you said you're going to go to the gym 3 times, you're going to eat healthy 6 times, you're going to go on 2 dates with your wife, and you're going to go on a special time with your kid twice. Okay, that adds up to a number. So a perfect week would be a number. How'd you do? And so like I literally do this every single day. This is literally my habit tracker. It's kind of hard to see on the video here, but it's like got a spot for 3 goals up top. It's got a spot for 9 habits down below. And I just every day, it takes less than a minute. I either check or dash. Check means I did it. Dash means I didn't. It takes me 5 minutes to copy it over next week. So we're talking about 5 minutes on a Sunday and 30 seconds every morning will absolutely transform your life.
You have to trust the process.
Yeah, trust the process. And how do you know you're doing it right? You track it.
Yeah.
Like this is just business, but you apply it to your life and it works so freaking good.
That's awesome. What's been one of the best resources in your business development?
I'd say utilizing the EOS system has been transformative. So EOS comes from the traction from Gino Wickman. It's a way of running your business with these different principles, how you run a meeting, how you hire, how you build out your goals with your team and organization. Pretty simple stuff, but man, that changed our life.
Do you kind of loosely adapt that, or are you pretty religious to that?
We are religious with it at Open Door Capital. I mean, we have a EOS, we have a consultant. We do it perfectly. And I'll tell you, like, there's a big difference. It's like going to the gym. If you go to the gym and you're benching, right? And you do 90% of the workout, it's a good workout. But that last 10% that gets you the gains, that's what gets you jacked, is that last 10% plus a lot of steroids. And so EOS, when you do it, we did it 90% and it was fine. And then that last 10% made us just dialed and helped us grow to, from 0 to $1 billion real estate portfolio in 4 years. And we did it because we were dialed. And then adding a consultant or a coach is like adding steroids. So it works really well.
How can people, so what are you excited about right now? If someone's listening to this episode, what do you want to direct them to?
I'm going to Disney World in 2 weeks. That's what I'm excited about. But where can I direct them to? A couple thoughts. The other I'll give you a second nugget of the day.
Oh.
And that is traditional real estate is really, really difficult right now. Now, maybe you guys in Ohio are getting more deals than we are anywhere else. But it's just in general, 8% interest, 7% interest is really hard to find anything that works traditionally. So what I'm really pushing lately, and I've been talking about it and preaching about it, is what I call the fringe strategies. It's the ones that are kind of the fringe of real estate. So I'm talking about things like rent by the room, assisted living, Airbnb or midterm rentals. It's all those kind of side business things. And so I would just recommend people look into that stuff. I have an can I give people a resource to go get a book I made? Okay, so I wrote an ebook. It's actually really simple. It's just like a list of 19 things, each with a couple page description. But it's just called 19. I think I'm going to change it to 20 because I want to add one more. I'll explain what that is in a second. But right now it's 19 cash flow strategies that still work in 2024. I think that's what it's called, loosely written. Anyway, just literally go to my Instagram and DM me. I have an automation set up so I can just say this on podcast. But if you go to Instagram and DM me just DM the word fringe, FRINGE. It'll just automatically send you the ebook. But it's there's 19, now I have 20 strategies that are working. And so I'm now also in the process of interviewing people in the Better Life Tribe that I run. Every month we interview 3 people, and I'm going to interview people in every single one of these niches as they're explaining what they're doing. So
that's cool.
Yesterday I interviewed somebody on boutique hotels, short-term rentals, and midterm rentals. The month before was co-living, assisted living, and sober living. And these people are all making cash flow on deals they're buying in this market, with this interest rates. So that's the little nugget I have is don't let anybody tell you there's not cash flow right now. There is cash flow right now. You just got to get on the fringes.
Did you say sober living?
Yeah, sober living. Yeah, it's actually a really cool strategy. There's such a demand for people who are just coming out of rehab. And these organizations like Oxford House is one of them. They're these big nonprofits, but Oxford House is the biggest. They'll rent your entire house from you for more than what you get traditionally. So maybe if you're $2,500 a month normally for a house, they might pay you $3,200. And then they take care of all the problems and the tenants, and they pay no matter what, whether there's a tenant there or not. And then the tenant are usually struggling people who are getting over, whatever, some kind of addiction. They live in the house and they have the house rules, and so it gets you a better return than you can get traditionally. And you're helping people. And
Wow.
Yeah.
most of those houses are terrible. And so if you can provide a good property, you can really help people in a good setting. So anyway,
That's
there's a lot
awesome.
there.
Wow. Well, we
Yeah.
have covered a lot in a very short amount of time. Can't thank you enough. Thanks for coming on for episode 100
Thank
for
you
us.
guys. Appreciate you guys. Keep doing the good word, the good fight. Keep
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Appreciate it.
As always, excited that you joined us for another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes. And if you want to learn how you can use your hard-earned capital to diversify into real estate, go to our website, lv5capital.com, and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper. We'll see you next time.